have a wonderful panel to talk with us today. I also want to just welcome everybody back virtually. We're going to ask our panelists some questions, and then we're going to open it up for you to ask questions. And we'll wrap it up around 11:30 for lunch. So you'll get to really talk with each other a little bit and get to know each other. But so I'm going to read from my script so I make sure I stay on point here. So we have 3 fellow Scleroderma friends here today, and they have graciously agreed to share some of their experiences so that we can all learn from each other. We have folks with a wide range of time spent with Scleroderma, as you have a wide range of time spent. We have some veterans and we have some folks who are really new to this experience. They also have very unique experiences, and that was part of what we were hoping to allow you to hear about the range, how everybody is so different in their experience. We have a lot of things in common, but it's not a cookie cutter experience. Excuse me. So let me just introduce our panelists. So Lakeisha Williams, who I mentioned earlier, is one of our support group leaders who she actually was so gracious to agree to be part of the South Carolina Rare Disease Advisory Council meeting patient panel group. And I asked if she would do this for us as well. So she is, I'll read this because I love this description. She's a spirit-filled single mom who has lived with Scleroderma for over 10 years. She continues to work in spite of Scleroderma and is an entrepreneur and has a license in massage therapy, as she mentioned earlier in this the previous presentation. Several years ago, she joined the South Carolina chapter of the Scleroderma Foundation Piedmont support group. We have other people from the Piedmont support group here. Anybody else? Good. And I think we may have some in virtual. I think I saw Belinda joining. So she joined that group, really became a part of that group, and then the leaders, it was time for them to step down. They were retiring from the support group leadership role. She graciously stepped in. So now she's taking a leadership role with the chapter, with the support group, and we're really appreciative of that energy. So we appreciate that so much, Lakeisha. We also have Margaret Chiara. So Margaret was diagnosed with Scleroderma in 2000. She was able to continue working as a federal prosecutor and later as a general counsel for a congressional commission on prison reform, and was able to continue that work despite Scleroderma. So I think it's helpful for people to hear that many people with Scleroderma are still able to work. It just may depend on the type of the autonomy you have in your job. However, in 2015, and this is unfortunately too often a situation for people with autoimmune disease, she was also diagnosed with Sjogren's syndrome. And this is an unrelated autoimmune disease, but it just is a good reminder that we often have more than one problem that are not necessarily exactly connected, but they certainly come into the mix and they have to be considered together as you navigate all of the treatment. So as Margaret stated, that was a game changer for her when Sjogren's came into the picture. And our third panelist, so we did ladies first, is Michael Rugg. And Michael was diagnosed with Scleroderma 3 years ago, so he has a more recent experience. He was originally admitted to the hospital with renal failure in 2020. And after many tests by different clinics, he learned that he had Scleroderma. He remains positive in dealing with the disease and doesn't let it get in the way of him accomplishing anything. He is happily retired. I love hearing that, after serving in the Air Force for 26 years and serving in the Naval Civil Service for 24 years. So please welcome our panelists. We're very appreciative of you joining us. And each of you has a unique journey with Scleroderma. And I think that's part of what makes Scleroderma so challenging. It can be very unique. In fact, I was just speaking to a newly diagnosed Tara, who's I found out is my neighbor, Dr. Silver. I want to make sure I introduce you to Tara in Traveler's Rest. It's very unique. So everybody has such a different experience. It can make it challenging to get diagnosed. Some of us are lucky. Things get put together quickly and some are not. So my question for my panelists, and I'll let you just, we don't have to go down the line. You can just kind of talk. You may say, I don't want to answer that. That's okay too. But if you would share with us details of your early symptoms or experiences of scleroderma and a little bit of how you got diagnosed, just to kind of give everybody a sense of what your experience was and they can relate to that.
Oh, okay.
You got nominated.
I got nominated, okay. I first got diagnosed, or actually, I got a free ride in the ambulance when I collapsed, and they thought I had chronic congestive heart disease. So I was in the hospital for 10 days. They run all sorts of tests, you know, a stress test, you know, and my heart was fine. Well, it turned out to be renal failure. And I went to cardiac rehab, and my skin started tightening up, started hurting. And it took almost a year of going to different clinics, you know, vascular doctors, you know, cardiologists, going around trying to figure out what's going on. People just didn't recognize that I had scleroderma until I went to the ER because it's really painful. I said, I have to have something. And the doctor looked at me and said, "No, you got scleroderma. You better see a rheumatologist."
Wow.
And so I started my journey. The first doctor said, "Well, you're going to be in pain and crippled for the rest of your life," which is not the right answer for me.
Yeah.
So went searching again, found Dr. Baker Frost and finally Dr. Silver. And that's why I'm so positive things are working out. So it just took a long time to figure out what was going on.
But quite a scary start. Yeah, I mean, that you kind of started right out the gate with the murder.
Especially when the EMS showed up, they were more interested in my pet squirrel.
They killed your squirrel?
No, I have a pet squirrel and it's in my house. And her name is Peanut. And so I'm here on a gurney, you know, y'all gotta be taking me someplace. Well, hey, what about this? You know, oh, geez. So
That's excellent. That's an excellent story, actually. How my squirrel almost got me killed.
yeah, I mean, yeah, when I got to the hospital, they asked me to sign a DNR statement if I want to see a priest. And y'all know something I don't, you know.
Wow.
Well, I didn't have such a traumatic beginning with the scleroderma journey. I was just working out. I was doing crime scenes outdoors, and the outdoors was in Michigan. And for those of you who have experience in the Midwest,
I'm from Detroit.
Yeah.
oh, you are. Okay, well, I was in the Upper Peninsula, and then on the western side of the state, and many years on the bottom of Indiana. So it's a beautiful, beautiful place, but the winters are really rigorous. Hence, Lakeisha and I here, and probably many other transplants as well. But the point is, with those outdoor scenes, crime scene investigations, I was, my hands kept stiffening, my toes, they kept, now they're a little discolored also.
Blue right now.
And I thought that, truly, I believed it was the onset of rigor mortis, which of course is totally dramatic. And I mean, but that's what I came up with. And then I found out that really it was Raynaud's disease, and that, and many of us are familiar with that, that's like, as the kids say, almost a nothing burger, the Raynaud's at this point. But at any rate, that was the beginning of my personal investigation into the situation. And my initial diagnosis, and again, I've heard this is quite common, was lupus. And finally, but without all of the difficulty that Michael had, the scleroderma became clear. And I remember saying to myself, now this was quite a long time ago, 2000. I remember thinking, okay, I call myself Margaret Mary, it's my given name. I said, okay, Margaret Mary, let's face it, you gotta learn how to spell it. Because I'd been resisting even spelling scleroderma, but now I can practically spell it backwards. So mine was a very easy journey, as Karen pointed out, definitely easy. I think primarily in retrospect for two reasons. First of all, the version I have is internal, an internal manifestation of the disease. And I feel that for those of us who are in that general category, we just have it easier. And secondly, I have had such good care. I mean, I was not on a hunt like Michael to find somebody to help me. My initial assistance was from Dr. David Fox from the University of Michigan Hospital, who actually studied under Dr. Silver. And then when I made my way here, I met Dr. Silver, being referred to him by Dr. Fox. It couldn't be easier for me. For all these years here in the Charleston area, Dr. Silva has been my linchpin as I have faced each new version of what I refer to as what fresh hell now. And he's found a way for me to make my way, if not through it, at least to in some way manage it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Lakeisha.
Okay, so for me, it's been relatively not as dramatic as the squirrel incident. Not to downplay because that is serious. But just like Margaret, mine was kind of a gradual thing. I was younger, of course, at that time. I started seeing signs. I had my daughter, who is now 18, soon to be 19, in 2005. And thereafter having her, I started experiencing a lot of swelling in my fingers, just in the mornings and things of that nature, just was not feeling well to be able to move. I'm a very athletic inclined person like all my life. And I was starting to have a lot of difficulty when waking up, and I thought it was something like postpartum, right? So you just think, oh, it's temporary. And then I'm young, so I'm thinking like when I go outside and it's not that cold outside, but I'm like, I have frostbite on my fingers. What's going on? And I started going to a rheumatologist in Charlotte, and they were saying, and I work in finance at that time, and they were saying, oh, well, it's carpal tunnel, it's rheumatoid arthritis. They called it everything else, and then they start calling it lupus, right? And because I was only really having joint issues at that time. After being finally diagnosed with what we thought was SLE lupus, maybe like a year or so later, I started noticing that my chest was very shiny. I had a piercing in my eyebrow that one day I was just taking a shower and it just fell out. And I'm like, how does it? And what happened was my skin had tightened so much it burst. So the skin it was just open, so it couldn't hold the piercing any longer, right? And I'm thinking, that's weird, and I still am like, how does that even happen? And being young, you just kind of attribute it to whatever. And still was going to the rheumatologist and I'm like telling them about these things. I'm like, can you look at my chest and everything is just so tight, it's so shiny. Why is it shiny? And then they start to say, okay, it's something else going on. And then eventually I was diagnosed with scleroderma. It's been a journey. Just like Margaret, it's more like I am experiencing more of hypertension and things internally than externally, as far as like the appearance. But my appearance to me has changed tremendously, and I just kind of stay positive about it and say that I'm able to. I've probably been 20 women in my all of my years that I've been alive, because all of the changes that I've seen. People don't, my friends and family seemingly don't notice the change as much because it's been gradual. And when you don't see people, you kind of just like go with it. But I've seen the change, tremendously, right? So my process has been completely calm, if you will. I know that it could be worse, you guys. I wanted to say that I appreciate this conference and being able to be a facilitator for people such as myself, because you guys show me what it could be, what I can do, what it might be, what it might not be, and it's helpful. And I appreciate you guys.
So quite a range of experiences. I think, Michael, your crisis situation, I've heard other people talk about, like that's their first entry, and then others, it's more this slow these emerging symptoms that could be so generic. So there's quite a lot of variability, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of stories that also vary and introduce new elements of either shock or sadness about how that had to happen. But one thing that I've really been impressed with in the scleroderma community, and I'm really proud of, I'm proud to be part of that community, is the resilience in the face of adversity. Even here, as I see folks are here about a really hard disease, are smiling and they're glad to be here and they're positive in the face of it. For our panelists, could you share one or two examples of some challenges you faced since your diagnosis, and then strategies that have helped you adapt to those challenges? So there's some things that you've kind of learned along the way, some obstacles. You may be dealing with one now, but how you've kind of approached living with that or getting through that.
I'll go ahead.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it, Michael.
When I first got diagnosed, I couldn't pick anything up. I couldn't move my fingers. And my strength was, I didn't have any. But I found if you have tweezers, you could pick things up. So I had tweezers all over the house, all in my pockets, in the car, and then had special tweezers so I can take the credit card out of the gas pump. That was difficult. Had one. Well, now they do. I didn't know about it then. Had one of those little alligator reacher thingies. I had those all over the house. I was driving everybody up the wall. So, and to pick things up, I had the little finger condoms or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
I picked things up with that, and just different little tools I had around the house, just scrape something up. To me, if I could pick up a penny, I thought I was doing pretty good.
That's a good day.
Yeah, so basically, and heat.
Yeah,
I found out if I put gloves on, put the little heat pack inside,
yeah.
when my fingers get cold and the Raynaud's shows up.
Speak to.
Yeah, well, for me, it's mainly my hands.
Yeah.
My toes just cramp up. As long as I don't fall over, I'm okay. But it's mainly my fingers. So
So that's a common thing, and we've talked about that before in past sessions about assistive devices. Really, they could be anything, so it doesn't have to be technical. I use needle nose pliers that have the little magnetic tips. That's my friend. I have that everywhere. Because I don't have, in my mind, I don't have fingertips or fingernails anymore to work with. I need my little pliers. Excellent. Others, a challenge you faced and strategies you've used to manage it.
It's like, for me, it was adjusting to the absurd. That's the way I can describe the challenges, and which is why I humorously, but it's kind of like dark humor. What fresh hell now? Okay. It's because it isn't clinically correct, but it really is my experience of Sjogren's. That's exactly what it is for me. So, and I do understand that there are a sizable number of people who have Sjogren's along with the scleroderma. So I hope what I'm saying is in some way useful. Well, a couple of illustrations. I grew up being a good girl who listened to her mama, so I always went to the dentist. My brother did, but I went to the dentist. And I had healthy teeth and healthy gums, but I developed raging dry mouth. And that required all of my teeth to be removed, my bone to be rebuilt, customized implants to be installed, because it is an appliance. And it took 18 months to do that. And it cost $60,000. I round up. Okay. It was not covered by insurance. I am very fortunate, and so often I think about those who are not, because I had retirement that I could use. Now, I was also, oh, and the reason it was denied, and this is just enough to make one scream, is because it was judged to be cosmetic. Who would do this to themselves?
Yeah,
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Kate Silver and my periodontal team that I worked with were very, very generous, and they helped me write an appeal, but it was not successful. So I was so delighted to hear our primary speaker say that some people are finally being able to get some insurance assistance, at least for part of their oral care. That was great news this morning. Now, another feature, a real challenge for me, is the dry eye. And you hear people speak very frequently, and I see all kinds of ads on TV for dry mouth, dry eye. Well, dry eye for me resulted in painful and actually limited vision, which was quite frightening. There was no relief for me for the various products that I saw. And I tried plugs, and I went from plugs to scleral lenses that I know are helpful to some, and I'm so glad they work. Those are the large, I like a large contact that adheres to your eye, and there's fluid in it, but and it covers your cornea. That simply did not work for me. However, through the guidance of Dr. Silver, found Dr. Karen Fernandez, and she was with us. Like, I can't remember which conference, but a few years ago, and she helped me with what is referred to as vital tears, and it is you put all these things together, and let's face it, it's a part-time job. So it just is. Yeah, you just have to just say, okay, because this vital tears are 4 times a day. I have it with me. It's in a cooler, but it's something you just do. And in the process, because of the Sjogren's, I lost my sense of smell completely. And I also am unable to shed tears. I feel deep sadness. Who doesn't, with our world the way it is today? In very deep sadness, but I couldn't possibly shed a tear. It's just not a possibility. So, but those challenges just lead me to say, in general, that when you have, for those of us who are organizers, administrators, all that sort of thing, you have plan A and plan B. Well, maybe we have to go to E and F or G and H and so on. But there is a way to make your way through. You just have to be very determined.
you have to be flexible, you
Oh,
have
yeah.
to be adaptable.
Mhm.
Lakeisha?
My biggest challenge was making the paradigm shift in my mind when it came to my physical abilities. Like I said previously, I was used to being an athlete all my life, running track, playing basketball, doing things that are very active, jumping rope, whatever, just coming easy to me. And making that paradigm shift in my mind to understand that my body is not, my mind is still able to do all of the things, but my body is not acting, it's not telling my mind what, it's not working together. That was a challenge, the biggest challenge for me in this situation here. And, I overcome it by just continuing to move and doing what I can. My mind, I can lift 25 pounds. right? In my mind, I still have to stop watching people that pick up 25 in my mind and go, oh, you could do that. And I try to go do it. I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. And let me get back over to the 5. But 5 is effective too if you're consistent, right? It's about consistency and being consistent. So I had to start with that shifting of my mindset. I had to start telling myself that I can, just in a different way. So I had to train myself to do things in a different manner. Like for instance, for a very long time, I could not raise my arms like this. I could raise my arms like this. And I had to train myself. And that's maybe because I praise the Lord, right? Here's a head. But because I was determined to know that I am still in there somewhere, right? And whatever is going on in there, I just have to work against it. And sometimes you just got to give yourself grace. Not sometimes, all the time. Give yourself grace and allow yourself to just like ease into whatever it is that your body is trying to tell you that you can't, but your mind is telling that you can. That has been my biggest thing, just because I didn't know how to wrap my head around not having the flexibility that I once had. It was very concerning to me that I could not crisscross applesauce. Like who can't? I have had very emotional experiences with yoga, but I keep going back, right? Only because it's like, even with the challenges, a lot of us can't open our hands wide. And I know I'm a massage therapist. I'm gonna get to that too. And I can't, on my right hand, I can't move my 3 fingers. They don't really have a lot of motion. This side is a little bit better, I haven't lost any of my digits, like some of other patients have. But even with yoga, it's like, some of the challenges that because I cannot lay my hands flat, to push up, it's a challenge. So, putting your stuff on a knuckle, who wants it at ouchie, right? So I have to like with yoga, I have to get out of my head and try to push forward and do things to try to navigate around what I can do. So I say all that to say is, if you're experiencing something that you once were able to do and your mind is still telling you you can do it, believe what your mind is telling you. Just be willing to be open enough with yourself to say, I could do this, but I just have to do it in a different manner. And that's okay. That is quite okay. Right. Um, and just keep pushing yourself to do what you can. Well, when it's time to rest, rest.
So I heard range of, certainly a range of challenges that I think everybody can relate to, but also approaches to strategies, from very practical things to networking and building your team to help you navigate through what you need, and also adjusting a mindset, but also being adaptive. I do feel a sense of positive attitude, even though I love your dark humor, because I think I think that's.
She said she was a
part of
crime scene
good attitude,
investigator.
like to be able to have humor. But I do, I remember early on, I said with scleroderma, I'm not going to have scleroderma and a bad attitude too. I can't do anything about one of them, but I can do something about the other. But I think it also shows that each person is going to kind of find their way. You can't necessarily tell somebody else how to do it, but other than that, you can find a way. Here's how I did it. Maybe that works for you, but you're probably going to have to tailor it to yourself. You guys have had varying amounts of time, but 3 years is still a long time to have scleroderma. Tell me, what do you think has anything gotten easier or harder that you would want to speak about?
For me, I think everything's getting better.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, because when I started, I couldn't dress myself, couldn't take a shower, let alone dry myself off. I didn't have the strength to tie my shoes. I mean, it was ugly.
Yeah.
And my hand was basically just a club. I could pick things up like this, like Lakeisha, I couldn't move my arms or anything. And now I'm pretty much functional. My hands, I still can't lay them flat, but I can move them. I can cross my fingers now, which I couldn't before.
Funny funny what becomes like, oh, I can, like, this is a great thing, and you take it for granted.
Yeah,
your
and
whole
people
life.
look at you like,
Oh, you're so excited.
you're weird. Yeah, so I think everything's getting a lot better. I can do just about everything, except I still have strength issues, but I'm getting old. It's okay.
That's why, how do I know? So what do you think helped you see this improvement? Was it treatment or?
I think it was treatment,
Okay.
MUSC and Dr. Silver especially. Yeah, I think that stuff's working.
Good, good. Others, what have things changed over time? Some gotten harder, some or gotten easier for you in your experience?
My ability to, like, I have on heels today. At one point in time, I couldn't wear heels at one point in time,
Mm.
right? But I was always a heel girl. You're gonna find me in some heels. You're gonna find me in some good little shoes. And it has gotten easier because over time I just tried, when I could, I did. When I couldn't, I just didn't, right?
Yeah.
What is still difficult for me is get not being able to because getting down, getting down and up, right? Doing tasks. 'Cause so I have a home that I do things around the house. I feel like I'm a professional DIYer. And I do a lot of things and try to be very independent in doing so. And so getting up and down is still a challenge for me because I don't really have the push in my lower extremity. And you know, it's hard when you don't, it's a simple task, but it's like you need help with it, right? So I'm
Yeah.
still trying to figure out how to not impose my task. My daughter, like, you don't want to do this DIY, not me, right? But I've tried to find a good way to try to, if I get down on the ground, how to get back up, and I may have to roll over, like me and my dog be rolling over together, and he thinks it's a game and I'm like, no, I'm really trying to get up, sir. But I just do the very best that I can. But that is right now still a challenge for me. Like if I get down, I'm not going to get up as easily. Right.
Love it. Love it. Margaret, how about you? Do you have some?
Whether it's gotten harder
Or
e-
easier, whichever you'd want to talk about, or both, if you have that.
I, uh, honestly, it's gotten much harder.
Yeah.
It has, but I'm amazed I'm going to say this publicly. I'm 80 years old.
Mm.
Okay. So it really, I mean, who knows how much of this for me is just, the gift of time, which does have its negatives. So, we know you have to be, more determined. And I keep going back to that. Or as Karen said, resilient. Sometimes you have to be downright fierce.
Mhm.
But I can't say it's easier because that would not be honest
Mhm.
for me. I'm just more practiced
Mm.
at coping. And in that sense, perhaps there's an ease there. But that doesn't mean that I would minimize for myself or any one of you the actual experience being anything other than a true challenge.
Yeah.
When we're going through it, it is just flat out challenging.
I appreciate too, I think I can, just having my own experience of time. I think in the early time, it was hard because I didn't know how the story was going to play out. And it was like one thing and then the next, and it just felt like the story gets kind of bad, bad, bad. But then I started to learn and adapt. It's not that the disease wasn't as mean. It's just that I was learning to navigate it and buffer myself. So I felt better. So in that way, it got easier. In a lot of ways, I think about it like an athlete. You train, and then the event seems easier, but it really was always as hard as it was. It's just you're trained. You're just a little better at doing it. And so it feels a little less overwhelming and confusing. You but it's still as hard. It's as much work. It's as much work. And I think for folks too, so I think yours is a great example. Each new thing is a new thing that
Mhm.
has to be adapted to. So you go through that again of, oh my God, what is this? What's going to happen? You know, you have the discomfort and is this going to happen forever? Is there relief?
Mhm.
Will I find it? And I think that does, when you can find some relief, then it starts to feel like, okay, I think I can do this. I can manage this. I
Mhm.
can live with this. Just don't make it any harder, right? Like you negotiate. Don't send anything else. I got this. So, if we're lucky enough to live many years with this disease or any chronic illness, sometimes the people in our lives can forget or become blind to how much energy it can take for us to look normal on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to ask the panelists, is there anything that you'd like people to better understand about the day-to-day experience living with scleroderma? And that could be to other patients or your family members or your healthcare providers. Anything that you'd like them to have insight into?
Yes, it's not contagious.
Oh, good one.
Before I retired, when I was able to go back to work and move around a little bit, I'm in my cubes, people come by, well, welcome back, you know. Plus it's during COVID, so no one knew where anybody was. And I could barely do a lot of things, but you know, I work on a computer now, so that was okay. And they said, what happened? And I said, well, I have scleroderma. They're out of my cube.
Yeah.
Chase them down the hallway. It's not contagious. So just a little understanding that there's a reason, you know, if your hands are kind of crippled, whatever,
Yeah.
it'll get better.
Yeah.
So
Or you adapt, because sometimes people.
adapt. Yeah,
doesn't-
I have my tweezers at work too.
I'm amazed at how people adapt.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys like somebody to
Well,
understand?
living with scleroderma and Sjogren's is exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's enervating. I mean, you can be annoyed a lot of the time. And that's because we can't do much of what we did. We simply are not able to, or we do it with great difficulty. So I think that patience with oneself, patience, I'd say to myself, patience, grasshopper, patience. You know, you just have to be patient. And this is something that we need from our family, our friends, and our coworkers. Their grace toward us of just being patient. Now, one of the real assets I deeply believe is community.
Mm.
And we, during the time that I've been associated with MUFC, I've seen the development of these wonderful regional community groups. You know, some at the outset, others have been in existence for quite a while, and it's a great, pardon me, it's a great resource that, if not through MUSC, from other sources, that I think we all deserve. And so it's worth trying to find community. And then also, you know, the fact that we're here or we're on Zoom, this is the 14th year
Yeah.
that we have had an annual conference, and learning never ends. I have never attended these conferences. I only missed one where I left not knowing something that I really, really needed to know, or if I knew a little bit, to understand much more. And I think that's really the benefit that we have collectively. And my understanding is this is people who attend, it's not just South Carolina, it's North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and probably other areas I don't know. So I, for one, am very grateful to Dr. Silva and to Susan Melvin and Karen Klemper and their colleagues who have made this possible for us. And if we really think we need to know something, we ask. And sure enough, eventually it's on the agenda. Yeah.
Well, I think too, when I think about what you guys have shared and the fine balance that we have as patients, where we are trying to maintain some of our autonomy and learning how to ask for help. And so part of what I'd want somebody to understand in my world, my social network, is it does take a lot of energy to look normal, right? To get through. Probably a lot of folks don't see you at your worst, so that they may underestimate how hard it is. So they see you kind of at the best. I think I had to learn to navigate how to ask for help, because I didn't want to have to ask for help. And I think part of maybe, and the caregivers in our room could probably elaborate on this. Folks want to help you. And so that's a gift, actually, when you let them help you. That's actually a gift to them, because they may feel helpless. But you also are navigating you want to have agency. And I'll say Susan's out there in Zoom land, so she won't let me pick up stuff at this conference. I'm not allowed to carry a box or anything. I said, but Susan, I live alone, and like I have to clean the gutters and do everything. But while I'm here, she doesn't want to see it. She's saying, and it's not good for your hands. You shouldn't do that. And so I think there's a fine balance to learning to ask for help, but also if somebody says, I don't want help, just to respect that too, because they're trying to maintain their independence and keep that part of it. Switch to a couple more questions, and we're going to open it up. Can you guys, well, we all face a lot of loss as a result of living. You lose a lot. We've talked about loss of independence, loss of function, loss of how we saw ourselves. But it is inspiring. You guys have a fighting spirit that I just love with Scleroderma. Even when I go to the national conferences, you see this fighting spirit. It's just amazing. So, and I know this is kind of late. You're going to love this. I know you probably love this one. Share one or two things that you've gained over the years living with scleroderma, something that is value added in your life because of scleroderma.
I've become more aware and understanding of people with disabilities. If they don't judge me, I'm certainly not going to judge them. So.
Yes, very good. Yeah. Others, one thing you've gained?
Well, I gained a lot of friends. That's
Yeah.
for sure. That's
Yeah.
for certain. I gained a lot of knowledge, how autoimmunes work, not just for myself, but just for other people in the world, and having the respect to understand that people with rare diseases, we all may share different diagnoses. However, we still share the same sentiment when it comes to the struggle and the day-to-day challenges that we experience. So I've gained a lot of knowledge with being a part of the Scleroderma group. I've gained a lot of friends, and I want to thank all the people that are here, but I also want to thank especially all the caregivers and spouses that are here. You guys are important, just as the patients are important. I always remember to just take in consideration and take your time with your spouse or your person that you're caring for. It is hard, like Karen said, it's very hard to sometimes ask for help, especially when one day before you didn't need it. And then now you do more and more, as time goes on. But I'm just grateful for being connected. If you're not a part of a support group, I so much encourage that. The support group changed the trajectory of how I feel like I'm living well. If I did not find that support group, I don't know if I would be living as well as I'm living today. So if you are not connected with a support group, see me after this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, living with these autoimmune diseases has reinforced my belief that it's who we are, not what we do or what we have done, that ultimately matters. And sometimes you have to repeat that to yourself more than once a day on the really bad days. And we also need to learn, no matter what our personalities are, or how introspective or how gregarious we might be, wherever we are with that, we have to find a way to be our own advocates. We must do that. And my most recent case, and it is really quite recent, of what I call what fresh hell now, is bronchiectasis, which is why I'm coughing. It's associated with scleroderma, and I have been told it is exacerbated by Sjogren's. So you're sort of caught in that. Now, my experience with the pulmonary services in general has not been good. It's an exception to my general care, which has been, in my view, just a gift. Nothing but I'm just gifted with the care that I've received, especially associated with MUSC. But it became evident that I was really having a very difficult time breathing, which can't be more basic than that, I guess. So I had to find a way, because the path wasn't clear for me as ordinarily it had been in dealing with these challenges. But I had heard through a physician's assistant about a specialized cardiopulmonary PT program here at MUSC. I didn't even know it existed. And that has been the game changer. I am learning how to prevent further lung disease, and also it's just improving my general health, because it's connected with exercise, and also, and I think that's the point you make about the importance of exercise, the exercise and the correct use of equipment that is designed for those of us who have respiratory challenges. You can have a room full of equipment, like your room full of tweezers, Michael, but if you don't know how to work it properly, you might as well have nothing. And this very, very fine cardiopulmonary PT, staffed by, in my view, just the most helpful people, has made such a difference, because now, I used to be worried about just being able to speak because of the Sjogren's, hence the water I always have. Now I started worrying about speaking at all because I couldn't breathe. Well, there is a way. But in that particular case, I had to be my own advocate. And I think sometimes that may happen to you too, that the next step isn't always evident. You have to forge forward and make your own path.
So that's a gift of learning how to be in that role and to um, make that change that has to happen for you to be well, have well-being,
Mhm.
not cured. So we only have a few minutes left.